For those of you who don't know me, my name is Veronica Green. I am the author of the children's book series, The Adventures of Veggie Vero. Veggie Vero is a vegan superhero who lives in the town of Kalesville, and she rides around on a veggie bike. So, she's pretty badass. She teaches children how to live a compassionate lifestyle and find alternatives to animal products. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the role of children in the vegan movement, where they all fit into this, how to transition omnivore children to a vegan lifestyle, and how they really are the future of this movement. But first, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So, my journey into veganism began 3 years ago. At the time, I was pescatarian. I was still eating fish, eggs, and cheese. And the funny thing is, I went pescatarian for the animals. Really, I didn't do any research, obviously, because if I had, I would have just gone vegan right away. But I just knew on some level that what was happening to land-farmed animals was really bad, and that there was a dark side to where I was getting my grocery meat. But I hadn't made that connection yet with fish, and certainly not with eggs or dairy. So I was pescatarian, and this was a really big deal for me because I come from a Hispanic home. My mom threw an annual pig roast with the whole pig on the table, the head and everything. So for me to be even pescatarian was a big step. And I felt good about it. And being a writer at heart, I wanted to write about it. So I came up with this idea to write a children's book about a superhero that would motivate kids to eat their veggies. I wasn't going to encourage eating animal products, but I wasn't going to discourage it either. It was just meant to be a fun character whose adventures would be centered around fruits and veggies, and she would get different superpowers from different vegetables. And I had already come up with the idea, with the name Veggie Vero. So I was excited about this. Before I started writing my first book, I started to do some research, collecting facts about the healthiest vegetables and all their properties. And I don't know exactly at what point, but somewhere in my research, I stumbled upon veganism. I had heard of it. I knew that vegans didn't eat any animal products, but I always kind of dismissed it as extreme or too difficult. But the more I read and learned, the more intrigued I became. The images and real-life footage from inside the slaughterhouse, the terror in the eyes of those animals, and the screams of a baby calf being dragged away from its mother, it woke something up inside of me. I realized that not only did I want to stop funding this violence, I realized that Veggie Vero could serve a much higher purpose than just getting kids to eat their vegetables. She could be the world's first vegan superhero for kids. She could empower kids who are being raised vegan to be proud and to find their voice in this movement. And she could plant a seed of compassion in non-vegan kids and families. That was my breakthrough moment. I made the decision. Veggie Vero would be vegan, and so would I. So now, 3 years later, I've published 4 Veggie Vero books and a kids yoga book. And I am so humbled by the community of vegan parents who have embraced me and shown me support. And I see that there's such a desperate need for children's literature that encourages kindness to all species and a true awareness of our ecological footprint. Almost everyone here has a direct link to children, whether you're a parent, an aunt, an uncle, you have young siblings, and those children are going to grow up to be consumers, inevitably. That's a given, right? And the choices they make as consumers have a direct impact on our planet and its inhabitants. I'm talking about real impacts not things that we can speculate over or debate, real measurable impacts. The rainforests are being destroyed so that we can have products with palm oil. Oceans are being poisoned to the point where fish are washing up dead on the shores. Toxic greenhouse gases are being released into the air by factory farm animals, millions and millions. Not to mention unthinkable suffering, not only by animals, but by humans. Over 21,000 people die of hunger every single day. Many of them living in parts of the world where plenty of grain and crops are grown, but they will never see it because it's shipped instead to wealthier nations so that we can feed it to our livestock, so that we can have meat. And the very consumers who will fund all of this going forward are those children who are sitting in classrooms today 5 out of 7 days of the week, learning how to be obedient and score well on standardized tests. Can we all just imagine for a moment what the future might look like if all schools instead placed their focus on producing conscious and compassionate members of society who can think critically to find more humane solutions to the world's problems? What would that look like? They would still have to learn the basics, right? Reading, writing, mathematics, science. But maybe they would be encouraged to use those subjects as tools to help them navigate the unsustainable systems that we currently have in place. First, they would have to learn what those unsustainable systems even are, because that doesn't seem to be a topic of discussion in schools. So maybe a whole course or a workshop on animal agriculture, and another on the overuse of plastics, and another on ocean pollution, and so on and so on. Maybe collaborative brainstorming about these issues would be a part of every school week, instead of something that we just brush over for Earth Day. And maybe there would be some new subjects in schools. Maybe gardening, maybe farming, learning how to plant your own food. Can you imagine the connection that children would feel to their food if they got to plant it, nurture it, and harvest it? Maybe animal studies would be a subject, a whole grade school subject dedicated to learning about the habits and intelligence of other species, particularly those species that are the most exploited. How drastically might that impact a child's view of pigs, cows, chickens, turkeys? My guess is they wouldn't even view them as food at all. They would see the individual, each one worthy of life, and each one simply here with us and not for us. We may never see that type of worldwide education system in our lifetimes, but what we do have control over is the example that we set at home. I believe that the parent is the most influential figure in a child's life. No matter what type of school the child is attending, their roots will stem from the home. Children from homes who recycle, they're going to have that value embedded in them, whether or not their school recycles. Children from homes who choose humane products and plant-based foods are going to have that value, whether or not their school does. Children from homes who practice growing something from seed, anything, whether it's herbs or veggies or flowers, they will have that value, whether their school has a garden or not. So it's up to the parents, caretakers, and guardians to set the example and create the lessons that our school systems fail to offer. The only way that this movement of compassion will continue to grow and prosper is if the children of today grow up with a feeling of responsibility for the planet and all living things. They must feel responsible, because loving animals is not quite enough. I loved animals growing up. I always loved being around animals. But guess what? I ate them too. I loved our beautiful planet. I enjoyed being outdoors, soaking in the nature. But guess what? I used excessive amounts of plastic with no regard to where it would end up or who it would affect. It wasn't until I took responsibility for my actions that I realized I have a direct impact on those things that I love. Then I was able to make a positive change and live more in alignment with my values. So love and appreciation is the first step, but feeling responsible is the very next step. I work with children almost daily. And probably the most common question I get from conscious parents is, how do I transition my meat-eating child to a veganism? This is a loaded question because there's so many different factors that affect the family dynamic. The relationship of the two parents, the lifestyle of each individual parent, hobbies, schools, friends. So there's no concrete answer, but there are a few tips that I stand by firmly. First, take your children to a sanctuary or some type of rescue farm. Make a family day of it and do it regularly if possible, so that your children can interact with the very animals they are consuming. We as a society are so disconnected from the food that we eat, and that's intentional, by the way. It's not in the interest of the meat and dairy industry for us to think fondly of the animals they slaughter. It's not in their interest for us to know how loving and gentle and intelligent these animals truly are. So hands-on experience with farm animals is on the top of the list because children deserve to know what they are consuming, and they deserve to at least have the opportunity to make that connection. When a child has become accustomed to eating meat, you can't expect them to easily make the connection between a steak on their plate and the actual living cow. But I can almost guarantee you that their view will start to shift after spending some time around cows, petting them, getting kisses from them, seeing them interact with their friends and families. I believe it's empowering for kids to see where all food comes from, including vegan food. So if you have the opportunity, take your children strawberry picking, tomato picking, or best of all, if you can, grow something in your own backyard. Now think of the educational value that you bring to your child if you were able to do both. Interact with farm animals and bring them to pick their own seasonal fruits and vegetables. You would be planting the very first seed of awareness in their minds. Awareness that in order to get meat, these beautiful sentient beings have to die. But in order to get plant-based foods, we need nothing but water, soil, and sunshine. That's a strong vegan message that you can deliver without even saying it. Just give them the physical experience. My next tip is, children have to like what they're eating and not feel like they're giving something up. That goes for anyone who's transitioning, really, but especially children, because kids are already particular enough as it is, and their taste buds are still developing. And if they don't like something, you really can't force them to eat it, right? So my advice would be, build on the dishes that you already know they like and experiment with veganizing it. So if they love spaghetti and meatballs, substitute with vegan meatballs. If they like burgers, do a veggie burger with all the fixings and make it delicious. If your family has a tradition like Taco Tuesday, don't stop doing it, just veganize it. You can get meaty textures from things like mushrooms and chickpeas. There's tons of recipes online. If you want to use frozen meat alternatives, there are some very good ones. I'm not a huge advocate for processed vegan foods, but they are a great tool for transitioning. Also, if you're able to get them involved in the cooking process, that's almost a foolproof way to get kids excited about eating a vegan meal. I've actually hosted a few cooking-themed birthday parties, and all we were making was a salad. But because the kids got to participate in the chopping and the stirring and the peeling and making their own salad dressing, oh my goodness, I have never seen kids so excited to eat salad before. So anything hands-on and plant-based is a step in the right direction. And the last tip I'll share with you today is be conscious of language when you talk with your children about food. Have them articulate their likes and their dislikes and what they dislike about a certain food. Is it too sweet, too spicy, too crunchy? Is it the texture or just the flavor? Take their ideas seriously and explore together whether or not it's possible to adjust the food to their liking. So if they dislike carrots, try broiling them to take away the crunchiness and bring out the sweetness. If they dislike squash, try grilling it on the barbecue or spiralizing it. There's lots of ways to be creative with plant-based food. And it's important for transitioning children to know that vegan food does not mean boring food. In fact, quite the opposite. And when you are talking about your children, don't let them hear you talking about what a picky eater you have. Instead, let them hear you bragging about what sophisticated foods your child has been trying. This will encourage them to expand their palate and try more and more new plant-based foods. Children are very capable of transitioning, in fact, more capable, in my opinion, because there's not a lot of ego involved. For an adult to become vegan, we have to admit that we had it wrong, right? We have to come to terms with the fact that for however many years, we were not living the most healthy, compassionate, and sustainable lifestyle that we could. Children, on the other hand, they're like little sponges. They're soaking up all this information, and if they can associate veganism with positive and delicious experiences, they will embrace it. In my books, I intentionally do not give Veggie Vero any supernatural powers. She doesn't shoot laser beams or disappear. Her special gift is to unlock compassion in the heart of mankind, which I think we can all agree is a pretty amazing power. My intention is for her superpower to actually be attainable by every child. Vegan kids should feel like superheroes because they are. And as they grow older and they begin to realize the severity of the situation they were born into, what they will need more than anything is courage. Courage to speak up when they see injustice, courage to hold their ground when everyone around them is passively funding violence, and the courage to tackle whatever passion they might develop in their life and use it to leave the world better than they found it. I'll be signing books under the Veg Fest tent. I hope to meet some of you there. Thank you so much.
Let's show some love for Veronica Green. Thank you very much.